I gave up my entire life for the man I loved. But the moment I arrived in his small Italian town, I realized I might have made the biggest mistake of my life. My name is Emily, and this is the story of how love carried me across an ocean, and how reality greeted me the moment I arrived. If this kind of true-to-life story resonates with you, please subscribe and leave a comment. It truly keeps this channel going. The resignation email sat in my drafts for 3 days before I hit send. Dear Sarah, I'm resigning from my position as senior UX writer, effective immediately. 12 words to erase 6 years at a Silicon Valley startup. 6 years of 70-hour weeks, of watching my reflection in office windows at 11 p.m. and wondering who that hollow woman was. 34 years old. Successful on paper. Dying inside. My apartment cost $3,400 a month for a parking garage view. My closest friend was a barista. When my college roommate Emma suggested I go to Italy, I booked the ticket that night. 2 weeks alone in southern Italy felt reckless and necessary. I met Luca Russo because I got lost. Rental car dying, GPS dead, sun setting over impossible blue water. I was near tears when a voice said, "You are lost." He was leaning against a stone wall, dark hair catching golden light. Not movie star handsome, better. Real. Very lost, I admitted. This is a good place to be lost, he said. His English was clear, lightly accented. When I showed him my hotel address, he laughed. Your GPS took you 30 kilometers wrong. And your car is very tired. My family has a restaurant nearby. You eat, I fix this. Tomorrow I drive you. I should have said no. Instead, I said okay. Trattoria Russo was small and humble, tucked into a corner with checkered tablecloths and walls covered in photographs. His mother cried when she hugged me. They fed me pasta that made me understand why people wrote poems about Italian food. Luca sat across from me, translating his mother's questions. You are here alone? He asked. Very alone, I said. I needed to remember who I was before I became someone I don't recognize. We talked until the restaurant emptied. About his family's struggling business. About my job that had consumed me. About buried dreams. You know what I miss most. The wine made me honest. Wanting something. Really wanting it, I said. And now? He asked. Now I think I'm starting to remember, I said. 2 weeks dissolved like sugar in water. He showed me hidden beaches, family vineyards, tiny chapels. But more than places, there was us. The way he listened. The protective touch crossing streets. The way he looked at me when I wasn't watching. The night before my flight, he cooked for me after closing. Emily, he took my hand. I think we have something rare. Can we try? When he kissed me, the world narrowed to the warmth of his mouth, and the certainty that I'd spent 34 years waiting for exactly this. Yes, I whispered. Let's try. 3 months of dawn video calls later, I boarded a one-way flight. My mother cried. You're giving up everything for a man you barely know, she said. I'm giving up everything for a chance to feel alive, I told her. Emma was cautious. Promise me you're running towards something, not away, she said. I promised. I meant it. Luca met me at the Naples airport with flowers. We drove south, and I watched the landscape shift, from city to coast to impossible beauty. Are you nervous? He asked. Terrified, I said. I just gave up my career, my apartment, everything. You gave up a life that made you unhappy, he said. He squeezed my hand. I know what you are doing for us. But entering the town, something shifted. The charming streets felt claustrophobic. When Luca stopped to greet people, constantly, the conversations were rapid Italian I couldn't penetrate. They'd glance at me, say something, and he'd respond in words I couldn't understand. What did they say? I asked. Just curious about the American girl, he said. The American girl, not Emily. A category. The apartment was a third-floor walk-up. 1 bedroom, tiny kitchen, living room facing the sea. His mother had left flowers and bread with a note I couldn't read. She welcomes you to the family, he translated. Standing in this small space in this small town where I knew no one but him and couldn't speak the language, I felt the first cold finger of doubt. What have I done, Emily? He said, his hand on my shoulder. You are okay? Just tired, I said. He pulled me close. Tomorrow we start our life together. You will see. This was the right decision. That night I lay awake listening to voices speaking words I didn't understand, church bells marking hours I hadn't learned, the sea constant and indifferent. I'd given up everything. For the first time, I wasn't sure everything was going to be enough. I met Alessia Russo on my third day. Luca left early for the restaurant. Come for lunch. I'll introduce you properly, he said. She stood behind the host's stand. Dark hair in a perfect bun, white blouse pristine. Mid-30s, effortlessly elegant in a way that made my jeans feel aggressively American. You must be Emily, she said. Perfect English, barely accented. No smile. Luca has told us about you. All good things, I hope, I said. Of course, she said. She assessed me. Clinical, measuring. He is in the kitchen. She called something in rapid Italian. Luca's mother emerged, crying and hugging me. They exchanged words too fast to follow, while Alessia watched with an unreadable expression. In the kitchen, Luca kissed my cheek, distracted, already turning to the stove. He switched to Italian, his whole body shifting into a language I didn't speak. I stood there, invisible. His mother pushed a cutting board and tomatoes toward me. I started cutting. She made a sharp sound, took the knife not unkindly and demonstrated 40 years of muscle memory. When I tried again, she made another dissatisfied sound and took over. Don't worry. Alessia spoke from the doorway. The kitchen is very particular. 3 generations, same way. Difficult for outsiders to learn. Outsiders. I'm a quick study, I said. Of course, she said. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. Luca left without looking back. Over the following weeks, every attempt to help was blocked. I offered to update their website. It looked a decade old. Alessia smiled. She said it's perfect as is. Our customers are local. I suggested social media. She said we tried before. Not for us. I offered to translate the menu. She said too much English is less authentic. She's just protective, Lucas said when I tried to explain. Give it time. But how could they know me when every conversation happened in Italian? When every family dinner was words I couldn't understand, laughter at jokes I'd never get? I spent days alone, studying Italian from apps that felt useless. The formal phrases had nothing to do with the rapid dialect around me. In San Francisco, I'd been an expert, making 6 figures because words were my superpower. Here, I couldn't order coffee without hand gestures. The breaking point came at family dinner after closing. Everyone at the long table. Luca, his parents, brother Marco, Alessia, uncles, grandmother. Me at the end, smiling and nodding while Italian flowed around me. Alessia was talking, animated. Everyone engaged, debating. I caught maybe 1 word in 10. What are you discussing? I asked Luca quietly. Restaurant business. Nothing important, he said. Alessia said something quick and light. Everyone laughed. What did she say? I asked. Luca sighed. A joke. That you look like a confused tourist who walked into the wrong restaurant. My face burned. The conversation moved on. 2 weeks later, I'd been secretly studying obsessively. Online tutors, podcasts, videos. Every hour Luca spent at the restaurant, I spent learning. Late afternoon, I let myself in through the back door. Voices from the kitchen. Luca, Alessia, Marco. I heard my name and froze. Alessia was talking. Even with my limited Italian, I understood enough. I'd never understand their culture. Too American, too used to my easy life. Too fragile. Luca had seen me crying when I thought he wasn't looking. I wouldn't last. Marco said something I missed. Then Luca, quietly. He said he loved me. Alessia's response was clear. She said love wasn't enough. They continued talking. About how I didn't fit. How the restaurant needed family, not outsiders. how eventually I'd go back to America where I belonged. I backed out silently, walked home in a daze. When Luca came home late, he kissed my forehead, apologized, asked if I'd eaten. I said, "I'm fine." He asked, "You are sure?" I said, "Just tired." That night I lay awake, truth settling into my bones. I'd given up everything. Career, home, entire life. To move somewhere I'd never be anything but the American girl who didn't belong. I traded financial independence for economic irrelevance, professional respect for being treated like I was culturally incapable. The man I'd done it for loved me, but Alessia was right. Love wasn't enough. I tried to build a life. Every morning, I walked to the cafe near the harbor, ordered coffee, attempted conversation. The owner was kind but efficient. Smile, hand me my cup, then switch to rapid dialect with the next customer. At the market, vendors spoke slower and louder, like I was hard of hearing rather than foreign. Other customers waited impatiently while I fumbled for words. Eventually, I started pointing instead of speaking. People were polite. No one was cruel. But polite isn't the same as welcoming. Kids stared. Older women whispered when I passed. I was always the American girl. Never Emily, never Luca's partner. A curiosity that would eventually leave. I felt like I was watching the town through glass. The daily rhythm became predictable in its loneliness. Luca left before dawn. Just for morning deliveries, he'd say, "I'll be back for lunch." He never was. I'd eat alone, listening to life happening below. Sometimes I'd surprise him at the restaurant, hoping to steal a few minutes together. But I was always in the way. He'd be elbow deep in prep, his mother shouting orders, Marco rushing past. The staff talked around me, not to me. "Go rest, amore," Luca would say, kissing my forehead without breaking stride. "I'll be home soon." Soon meant midnight. Meant I'd fallen asleep alone again. I met Elena Ferraro on a Thursday afternoon. I was at the restaurant with my laptop, pretending I had work. The door opened and a woman walked in like she owned the place, beautiful in an understated way. Dark hair loose, simple linen dress that probably cost more than my rent. Mid-30s, wedding ring catching the light. There was something subdued about her, a quiet sadness that softened her elegance. "Luca." Her voice was warm, familiar. He came out of the kitchen, face lighting up in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. She hugged him. Close, lingering, her hand on his back a moment too long. They spoke in rapid Italian. She laughed. He touched her arm. I felt invisible. Luca's mother emerged, crying with joy, pulling Elena into the kitchen. Alessia appeared, kissing Elena's cheeks, chattering in dialect. Even the quiet grandmother smiled. Elena belonged here in a way I never would. "Emily." Luca finally noticed me. "Come, meet Elena. She grew up here, with all of us." Elena turned, smiled genuine. "So you are Emily. Luca has told me about you. Welcome to our little town. You must be adjusting." "Trying to," I said. "It's not easy, I know. People here take time to accept outsiders. But you have Luca. That's what matters," she said. She said it kindly, but something in her tone suggested she knew exactly how not accepted I was. She turned back to Luca, switching seamlessly to Italian. They fell into easy conversation while I stood there, understanding nothing. His mother insisted Elena stay for dinner. They set a place at the family table like it had always been hers. The conversation flowed around me. Rapid, intimate, full of shared references I'd never understand. Elena asked Luca something that made him laugh. She touched his hand across the table. I watched from my seat at the end, the American girl who'd walked into the wrong restaurant. That night, lying awake, I realized the truth. I didn't have a single friend in this entire town. Not one person I could call. Not one real conversation. Not one relationship outside my connection to Luca. The town was full of life I couldn't access. Luca was consumed by obligations I couldn't share. And now there was Elena. Beautiful, fluent, beloved, moving through my new world like she'd never left. I pulled out my phone. Opened LinkedIn for the first time in months. My profile stared back. Senior UX writer. 6 years experience. A woman who used to matter. I didn't update it. Not yet. But I didn't close it either. Elena was everywhere. She'd call Luca about paperwork, tax documents, insurance forms, things her wealthy traveling husband should handle. She'd need household help. A leaking sink, a door that wouldn't close, a garden wall. She'd text about nothing. Childhood memories, inside jokes, questions about old friends. Just helping an old friend, Luca would say, leaving dinner to take her call. Her husband is always away. She's alone in that big house. We grew up together. She's practically family. But it felt like more than that. The Russo family adored her. When Elena came to the restaurant, often, Luca's mother would insist she stay for dinner. Alessia would pull up a chair, switch to rapid Italian, include Elena in every conversation while I sat silent at the table's edge. They never did this for me. The family relaxed around Elena, expanded, became warmer. With me, they were polite but careful. With Elena, they were themselves. She understands our way, Alessia said once. She's one of us. The words landed like a verdict. The small intimacies gutted me. The way Luca lit up when Elena walked in. How his posture changed, his voice softened. The inside jokes I'd never share. The memories I'd never be part of. One evening, Elena arrived upset about her husband. Luca pulled her aside, hand on her shoulder, voice low and comforting. I tried to talk to him that morning about feeling isolated. He'd said, "Not now, amore. I have deliveries." But for Elena, he always had time. She asked about his stress, the restaurant's finances, his father's health. She touched his arm when he answered, hand lingering. He told her things he hadn't told me, problems I'd tried to help with, offers he'd dismissed. I was his partner, but Elena was his person. I tried to set boundaries. Do you have to fix her sink? Can't she hire someone? Luca looked surprised. She needs help. She has money. She has a husband, I reminded him, who is never there. This is how it works here. We help each other, he insisted. You help her a lot, I said, trying to stay calm. She's an old friend. This is a small town. Everyone knows everyone. His voice took on an edge. Why are you making this into something it's not? Because I could feel it. The way he leaned into her presence. The way she fit into his world while I remained forever outside. Never mind, I said softly. I'm just tired. I reopened my LinkedIn late at night while Luca slept. I updated my profile, added open to remote opportunities, started searching for positions in Milan, Rome, anywhere north. I took calls with recruiters while Luca was at the restaurant. A startup in Milan needed a senior writer. A tech company in Rome wanted someone immediately. I didn't tell Luca. The night I saw them together, I'd been walking home from the town's book club. Another failed attempt at connection. They'd been polite, then immediately switched to dialect I couldn't follow. After an hour of nodding, I'd left. The restaurant was still lit. Through the window, I saw Luca and Elena standing close, laughing, her hand on his arm. His head tilted toward hers in that way that suggests real listening. Nothing inappropriate was happening. No kiss, no embrace beyond friendship. But watching them, the ease, the intimacy, the way they existed together without effort, something broke in my chest. He had a life here. Full, complex, deeply rooted. A life that included Elena, Alessia, his family, this town, 1,000 connections I'd never touch. And I had nothing. I turned away before he could see me. In our apartment, I opened my laptop and accepted the interview request from the Milan startup. Love wasn't enough. Maybe it had never been. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. Dear Emily, we're pleased to offer you the position of Senior UX Content Strategist with our team in Milan. Salary €85,000. Start date flexible. Remote first culture. Please respond within 1 week. I read it 3 times. Sat with my coffee going cold, staring at the words that represented an exit door. I hadn't known I desperately needed. I didn't accept. Not yet. I saved the email in a folder labeled personal and closed my laptop. That afternoon, I told myself I would make one last attempt. The restaurant was preparing for dinner service. I walked in through the back, my heart pounding, with something that felt like hope and desperation mixed together. Luca, I was thinking, maybe I could learn the menu properly? Help with descriptions, or, he said, Emily, not now. We're behind on prep. He didn't look up from the vegetables he was chopping. Alessia breezed past carrying wine bottles. She said, the menu is fine as it is. We've had it this way for 20 years. I just thought, I started, my voice shrinking a little. You are very sweet to offer, Luca's mother said, patting my arm absently, then said something in rapid Italian to Marco. They both laughed. I stood there, invisible again. A well-meaning obstacle they had to work around. Go rest, amore, Luca said. I'll be late tonight. We have a large party. I left through the back door, the same way I'd come in. I almost didn't go back that evening, but I'd left my scarf. A stupid, thin piece of fabric I didn't even need. An excuse to return, to try once more to be part of his world. The restaurant was closed, the dining room dark. But voices came from the kitchen. Italian, rapid and comfortable. Luca, Alessia, and Elena. I stood in the shadowed hallway, my hand on the door handle, and listened. Even with my imperfect Italian, I understood enough. Too much. Alessia was talking about me. Something about how I'd offered to help again. How sweet it was that I kept trying. The tone was condescending, pitying. Elena said something softer. But I caught the essential meaning. She didn't think I was suited for this life. Too different, too used to American comforts. Then she added something else. Gentle, almost sympathetic. About how adjustment takes years, and some people never really adapt. It wasn't cruel. It was worse than cruel. It was dismissive certainty. Then Luca. My Luca. He tried to defend me. I heard my name, heard him say something about giving me time. But his defense was weak, half-hearted, like he was going through the motions because he was supposed to, not because he believed it. Then his voice shifted, softened. He said something to Elena in Italian that I understood clearly enough. You're the only one who really gets it. What this place means, what the family needs. There was a weight in his words, a trust he'd never quite extended to me. Alessia's response was clear even through my limited vocabulary. She said I was fragile, that I cried when I thought no one was watching, that eventually I'd realize this wasn't my place and go back where I belonged. She won't last, Alessia said in English, deliberately, maybe for Elena's benefit, maybe just for emphasis. They never do. Silence. Then Elena, gentle but certain, it's not her fault. She didn't grow up with our ways. Maybe it's better that way. For both of them. And Lucas said nothing. Said absolutely nothing. That silence was louder than any words. I stood there in the dark hallway, holding my breath, holding myself together. They weren't cruel people. They weren't villains. They simply saw the truth I'd been refusing to see. I would never belong here. Not really. Not in the way that mattered. All my efforts, learning the language, trying to help, attempting to integrate, were just postponing the inevitable. They were waiting for me to figure it out and leave on my own, so they wouldn't have to ask me to go. Even Luca, especially Luca. He loved me. I believed that. But he loved his family more, loved this place more, loved the version of his life. That didn't include an American woman who couldn't conjugate verbs correctly. He hadn't asked how my day was in weeks, not because he didn't care, but because it never occurred to him that I had a life here to ask about. I backed away from the door silently, walked home through empty streets, past the harbor, where I'd first met him, past the cafe where I'd failed to make friends, past the market, where I'd learned to point instead of speak. In our apartment, I opened my laptop. The email was still there, waiting. Please respond within 1 week. I typed thank you for this opportunity. I'm very interested and would like to discuss next steps. I didn't hit send. Not yet. But I would. That night, Luca came home after midnight, kissing my forehead like always. "You're still awake." "Couldn't sleep," I said. He climbed into bed, exhausted, already, half asleep before his head hit the pillow. I lay there beside him, wide awake, feeling the truth settle into my bones like sediment. This relationship, this life, was built on a foundation that had been crumbling from the start. I'd just been too desperate, too hopeful, too in love to see it. But I saw it now, and I knew what I had to do. I hit send on Thursday morning. "I accept your offer. I can start in 3 weeks. The response came within an hour. Welcome package, onboarding schedule, remote work guidelines. They were thrilled to have me. I was thrilled to have myself back. Sunday dinner was a command performance. Luca's entire family gathered at the restaurant's long table. Parents, Marco, grandmother, uncles, Alessia. Elena arrived late, apologizing, sliding into the seat next to Luca, like it had been saved for her. The conversation flowed in Italian. Rapid, comfortable, a river I'd never ford. They laughed at shared jokes, debated family business, talked over and around, and through each other in the way families do. I sat at the end of the table, the American girl who'd walked into the wrong restaurant and stayed too long. But this time, I wasn't silent. "I understood more than you thought I did," I said in English. Clear, calm. The table went quiet. Luca looked up, confused. "Emily," I said, "last Tuesday. The kitchen." After closing, I kept my voice even, factual. "You were talking about me. All of you." Alessia's face went carefully blank. I continued, "You said I was fragile, that I'd never understand your culture, that I'd eventually go back to America where I belonged." I looked at each of them in turn. "You said I wouldn't last, that people like me never do." I paused, letting the words settle. I added, "I learned enough Italian to understand the conversations you thought I couldn't. I've been studying for months. You talked around me for so long, you forgot I could learn." Luca's face drained of color. He whispered, "Emily, I said, you tried to defend me, briefly, but you didn't really disagree." He stammered, "That's not, I didn't mean." I said, "I know you love me, Luca. I believe that." My voice didn't shake. I'd cried all my tears already, alone in our apartment, in empty streets, in the shower where no one could hear. But love isn't enough when I'm the only one fighting for this relationship. For this life I uprooted everything to build with you. When your family will never see me as anything but temporary. When you confide in Elena before you confide in me. Elena looked down at her plate. His mother said something in Italian. Rapid, questioning. Alessia responded, also in Italian. They were doing it again. Having the real conversation in a language I couldn't access. "Stop," I said. "Please, just stop." Everyone froze. "I've accepted a job in Milan. I start in 3 weeks. I'm leaving." "No." Luca stood, knocking his chair back. "No, Emily, please. We can fix this. I'll talk to them. I'll make them understand." I said, "Make them understand what?" "That I deserve basic respect. That I'm not just some American girl passing through?" I shook my head. "I shouldn't have to convince your family I'm worth including, and I shouldn't have to convince you to choose me over everyone else, every single time. I do choose you." I said, "You don't, Luca. You choose them. You choose this place. You choose the life you've always had." I stood, pushing my chair back. "And that's okay. I understand why. This is your home, your family, your history. But it's not mine. It never was." His mother was crying. Alessia looked stunned. Marco stared at his plate. "Emily, please." Luca's voice broke. "Don't do this. I love you." I said, "I know you do. I love you too. And I meant it. But I can't keep sacrificing who I am for a life where I'll never truly belong. I can't keep being invisible in the very life I built around you. I can't keep disappearing in a relationship that only exists when it's convenient." Luca said, "I'll change. We'll change. Just give us another chance." I said, "I gave you chance after chance. I gave up my entire life for chances. I picked up my bag. I'm done giving. It's time to build something for myself. 3 weeks later, I stood in a Milan apartment with sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The air smelled different here. Espresso and fresh bread, yes, but also exhaust and possibility. And the particular scent of a city that never stops reinventing itself. Outside, the street hummed with a dozen different languages. I could hear English, French, something that might have been Arabic, conversations, blending together in a symphony of belonging by not belonging. My laptop was open on the counter, first day onboarding emails waiting. The neighborhood outside was busy, international, full of people from everywhere and nowhere. Expats, immigrants, students, entrepreneurs, people like me, building lives, in a city that didn't require you to prove you belonged. Here, being foreign wasn't a liability. It was simply a fact, as unremarkable as the trams that rattled past my window. I made coffee in my own kitchen, sat at my own table, looked out at a city that held no painful memories, no failed attempts at integration, no ghosts of the person I'd tried to become. The anonymous freedom of it felt like oxygen after months of slow suffocation. No one stared. No one whispered. No one knew or cared that I was the American girl who couldn't quite fit. For the first time in years, I felt myself expanding instead of shrinking. Like my life finally had room for me again. My phone buzzed. A message from Emma. Proud of you. Call me when you're free. I want to hear everything. I smiled. Replied. Absolutely. The life I'd had in Italy, the small town, the restaurant, Luca, felt like something that had happened to someone else. A beautiful, painful dream I'd finally woken from. I hadn't found a new life. I'd built one. And this time, I was building it for me. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story reached you at the moment you needed it, leave me a comment. I'd love to know you were here.